Good morning, everybody, and good afternoon to our colleagues in the Northern Hemisphere. My name's Noel Lindsay, and I'm the Dean of Business at the Adelaide Business School and Pro-Vice-Chancellor Entrepreneurship at the University of Adelaide. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all to the AmCham Australia, the Business of Wine, Part 2 webinar, partnered with Adelaide Business School. Before we start, just a couple of housekeeping notes. Can I ask you to please keep any questions you may have throughout the presentation and put them in the Q&A section, which is located on the bottom bar of your Zoom screen, and the speakers will be happy to answer your questions. The webinar is also being recorded and is available for viewing on the AmCham member website. Now, we've got an incredible lineup of speakers today, and I would like to now introduce you to them in no particular order. So first up, we've got Linda Reef. Linda is the President and CEO of the Napa Valley Vintners, the organization that creates unparalleled success and worldwide acclaim for America's iconic wine region. Under Linda's leadership, Napa Valley Vintners' marketing, promotions, communications, and education efforts have expanded around the world, and the organization has become an influential leader on global wine industry issues. In January 2020, Linda received the Person of the Year award from Wine Enthusiast magazine. Brendan Carter is half, I should say, of the duo behind Team Unico, the creative powerhouse that brought drink brands to life, such as Unico Cellar, Applewood Distillery, Harvest Social Cantina, and Okar Island Bitter. A self-described agri-geek, Brendan's focus is on drastically changing our relationship with the land that we belong to, via crafting produce that speaks of a crystalline expression of place while growing an inclusive community of drink lovers. He, along with his wife Laura, run a crack team of creatives that are inspired to spread the story of the ancient landscape around the globe in a more relevant manner. Next up, we've got Katie Spain. And Katie is a journalist, a wine writer, and author. Katie is currently the wine scribe for News Corp's Delicious Essay, The Advertiser, and Sunday Mail, and is a feature writer for Australia's Wine Business magazine. Her career highlights include editor of Broadsheet Adelaide, Fritz magazine, and national travel magazine G'day, and food and wine writing for the Advertiser Food Guide, Gourmet Traveller's Restaurant Guide, and the Food Guide 2021. Next up, we've got Chester Darrenberg Osborne. Darrenberg chief winemaker and viticulturist, Chester is the fourth generation of the Osborne family to grow grapes and make wine on the McLaren Vale property purchased by Joseph Osborne in 1912. Chester continues his family's winemaking tradition, utilizing the vineyards, original cellars, and the traditional winemaking techniques handed down by his forefathers. And then last, we've got Dr. Armando Maria Corsi. Armando is an associate professor in wine business and the team leader, wine business at the University of Adelaide. His key area of research is the analysis of consumer behavior, particularly toward wine and other premium foods and beverages. Dr. Corsi has been chief investigator of some major projects funded by Wine Australia, examining the effects of non-price promotions in store, tracking the ever-changing Chinese wine market, improving the techniques to describe wines to Asian consumers, and exploring the most effective ways to teach them about wine. Now, Armando is going to take over now and run the panel, but a big welcome to our distinguished panel of panelists. And I look forward to hearing from you all, and I'll catch up a bit at the end again as well. Armando, over to you, mate.
Professor Lindsay, thank you very much for the introduction, and welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome as well to our panelists. Welcome to this, as Professor Lindsay said, part 2 of the series that the Adelaide Business School is organizing in collaboration with AmCham. Part 1 last week, we talked a little bit more about the role of export and sale, and this week we thought it might be interesting to focus on another area that has been unfortunately quite hit by the events of the last 6 months. First, of course, the issues that we have with staying at home and being in lockdown have probably cut one of the essences of what doing tourism means, which means leaving our houses and visit places. And later on, of course, the impossibility to visit restaurants, to visit cellar doors also generated that level of impact on the way in which we've been seeing wine tourism in particular to be managed in the last few years. And so we thought, with 4 people who have certainly lived and breathed the way in which wine tourism could be managed, it could be interesting to hear from them what has been their experience from different angles and what could be the avenues that we can explore moving forward. Every time I've been starting to facilitating these webinars lately, I always like to engage with our attendees and make sure that you guys are with us, that you're not hidden somewhere, not in front of your laptop or your smartphone. And so we have a couple of poll questions for you before we really hit our road of questions for our panelists. I'm asking Claire if the first if the first poll question can be popped up, and we would like to just see first of all who you are. So if you can see, the first question is asking you, what is your role? And that, according to what we set up, it should be a multiple choice question. So you might actually wear different hats, so please tick as many boxes as you like. I'm gonna give you a few seconds to answer so that we can have just a little bit of a view of who is in front of us, on the other side of the screen. Maybe we can take a close, and Claire, if you can show us the results of the first polling question. Okay, so we have, I guess the majority, we have marketers and sales agents, a few fellow researchers, lecturers, winery owners, and tourism operator. That seems to be the audience that you guys are gonna provide answers to. So thank you very much, Claire, for the first question. And then we had a second question, which is going to ask, I think Claire is going to pop it up right now. We thought to be another question, what has been the biggest change that you've seen that has been brought by COVID-19 to the wine tourism industry? Has that been the use of virtual wine tasting, the development of new city tasting experiences, the expansion of cellar door offerings to non-wine related experiences, of course, the stop or the reduction of international tourists, the strengthening of collaboration between wineries. We've seen, probably Brendan is going to tell us a little bit more about that. The strengthening of collaboration between wineries and other food businesses, all the strengthening and collaboration between wineries and non-food businesses such as arts and charities, unfortunately the loss of jobs or others. This we just thought to be a one answer. So just what you think to have been the biggest challenge that you've seen in the wine tourism industry so far. I'm just going to let another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then Claire can show us the results. Okay, of course, stopping the reduction of international tourists. It's probably been, of course, the biggest one, followed by the expansion of cellar door offering to non-wine related experience and the use of virtual wine tasting. Okay, so I think we have, and you guys, our distinguished panelists, you have a little bit of an idea of what our attendees are thinking about, what's going on. And so I would like to kick off with a question for all of you. And maybe we can start this round in the same way in which Noel introduced all of you. So Linda, Brendan, Katie, and Chester. Can you please tell us 1 or 2 things that you've seen that you really liked, and 1 or 2 things that you really disliked about the way in which things have been changing in the last few months?
Okay, hi Armando, hello everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm very happy to join you. It's 5 o'clock in the afternoon here in Napa Valley. I think the things that I like that have been great is the dramatic increase in consumption of wine at home. People are buying a lot more wine here in the United States in retail outlets. It's off the charts. You may have read about it. So just the consumption of wine at home is more of a part of a daily or, several times a week lifestyle. I think that that's terrific for our industry. And then, of course, the use of everything in the virtual space. I love that it forced everyone, including our organization, to get more deeply into leveraging what you can do virtually. What I don't like, obviously, is the horrible job losses and economic toll that it has taken, in addition, of course, to the health crisis. And personally, I really miss the more natural collaboration with our team at the Napa Valley Vintners. We're like a family, and so I miss naturally working with them every day. It's hard to work virtually, as I'm sure everyone has learned.
Thank you, Linda. Brendan.
What, I guess, in the last, what would it be, almost 6 months now, 4 to 6 months, probably I definitely totally agree with Linda, the ability to be able to put digital first. My age demographic, we grew up with digital first. We grew up behind screens. So we've always felt really disconnected with many other generations that sort of favor different methods of communication, more traditional methods of communication. And in a sense, to be able to have sort of a meeting of the minds between, vast demographics or psychographics that allow us to be able to communicate in a way that we also find very, very familiar. For us, I think it's been a real connecting experience because we've actually been able to give other demographics that might not have found this medium very comfortable, and we've given them sort of a welcoming hand into that. I guess what I've disliked is I think it's a bit of a general thing. The still current demanding that government step in to figure stuff out for individual businesses. We've managed to find sort of new ways to innovate, and not without doing a hell of a lot of work. But it's not always up to government to be able to fix our problems for us. And the opportunities that are out there at the moment are literally countless. Still the stubbornness of some companies that refuse to innovate or put extra effort in.
Thank you, Brandon. Katie.
Hi, everyone. Look, coming out of the whole, I guess the COVID and the haziness of the last 3 or 4 months, what I really have liked seeing is some of the quick thinking, out of the box solutions that particularly wine brands have come up with. And as an example of that, at-home tastings was a big one. And I guess that carries on from what Linda was saying. A lot more people are drinking at home, but I really liked the fact that some cellar doors, without being able to have visitors, sent the wine to people and did it in a way that was professional and on brand. So sending little tiny tasting packs out with wine glasses and things. And home delivery services that some of the wine bars around, particularly Adelaide, set up, again, at a very high quality. One of them was Lee Street Wine Room that set up juice traders so that they could get their wine to people all over the country. And digital tastings. So I think digital conversations, Unico Zello probably led the top of the pack in this. How many is it now, Brendan? I don't know. You've been doing it for months, every single night, and I didn't think that would be possible, but you've done it. It was beautifully executed. They have great industry guests on every single night, and it just was a great brand building and engaging way to interact with everybody, not just consumers of booze. What I haven't
we're gonna dig it with him a little bit more later.
Yeah, good. What I didn't like, other than all the obvious things about, I guess, the global pandemic, was some of the behaviour out there in the public, especially now that things in South Australia are starting to open again. And by that I mean turning up to a cellar door, booking a place and staying there for 2 hours with 6 people over 1 bottle of wine. I think maybe that's part of my job as a storyteller to let people know that the way we taste wine is changing and they need to change with it.
Yep. Thank you, Katie. Chester.
Yeah, hi everyone. The pandemic started in March, early March, of course. Well, of course, in China it started before, and we did notice the impact on our Chinese sales and on our Chinese visitations in February, and so there was already an impact starting to happen then. But of course, we're vintage. Grapes were ripening no matter what, and we were a little bit concerned that we were all going to be closed down. We weren't going to be allowed to make wine. Well, that didn't happen, of course. And so actually life was sort of fairly normal vintage-wise for us, and that we had to crush the grapes to make wine and try and social distance at the same time. And that all happened. And but of course the Darrenberg Cube, which has a lot of visitations, had to close in mid-March. And the Darrenberg Cube restaurant we closed a week before. And because it was, it's $300 a meal sort of thing, and that area was already starting to really show that was a real problem, and unfortunately we can talk more about that, what we've turned into after that. But as far as what I've been doing, I suppose, other than just winemaking and blending and so on, my house is tidier than it's ever been. The number of sculptures I've made have gone through the roof, so I've got a lot of sculptures happening. The Darrenberg Cube is getting filled up. Every little sort of nook and cranny has got a new sculpture in it, and we've got another 16 video content pieces, so 16 different label names in our 360-degree video room have been done. So we've still maintained adding to the Darrenberg Cube so that people could come in. But we opened about 5 weeks ago, the Darrenberg Cube. We were allowed to here in Claremont, and we opened 7 days a week about 3.5 weeks ago, and which a lot of people thought was pretty gutsy to do. But actually, visitation for the last 3 weeks I looked at recently has been half of what we had the year before. So I was surprised. Obviously, it's all South Australians, but it's still they're making it up the difference a bit.
I'm definitely gonna ask you a little bit more about that, Chester, and surely, I mean, we all then have to come and visit the new sculptures that you put in there. But look, I think we just now broke the ice a little bit, and we can move on. And I want to then go back now to Brendan. Look, I think you have really, Brendan, I think, taken the lead with, first of all, the digital happy hours, and then the wines for the people, to the point that, in my mind, you've become the David Letterman or the James Corden. You can decide, or the Jay Leno, you pick and choose which one. How do you want to describe yourself? Of virtual wine tasting, by, first of all, describing your wines, but then also hosting other wineries during your event. So I guess I'm curious to understand a little bit more how the entire idea came about, and sort of how you've been structuring those events.
Sure. Well, firstly, I'm definitely no David Letterman. I'm purely Brendan Carter. I can assure you of that. Look, the whole concept came about obviously during lockdown and during the main bars and restaurants closed. Our business was 80% distribution based. Yep. And I just couldn't shake the fact that 100% of our entire business model has really been about delivering value to customers above just setting a price tag and doing things cheaper. And the only way that I could actually feel that we could offer value to just people in general, like fulfill some kind of business related purpose, was to give people the opportunity to be able to knock off when at home in a very comfortable and inviting and fun and entertaining atmosphere, recognizing that, the 2 points that people would typically decompress at the end of the day, they'd go out to a pub or wine bar, crack a bottle, have a couple of tinnies with some mates, and, eventually they'll, be able to have a bit of a laugh and a bit of a decompression. When it comes to people, doing the ritual at the end of the day, they turn the lights off at the office, sit in traffic for an hour, get home, the other half goes, hey, would you like a glass of wine? Tell us about your day. Those two interactions weren't really happening on a daily basis. And whilst there was a lot of chatter about, the financial aspects of lockdown, there was very little chatter about the emotional level of, the aspect of lockdown. And, whilst we're utilizing Zoom, 50% of the world are introverts. I'm married to one. And I was deeply concerned about people that don't have a really wide network. The human interactions, which are crucial, they're forced to undergo on a daily basis, and that's how they build their network. Once you finish Zooming everyone, family, what else? So we decided, you need to be able to have essentially like a broadcast or network show. Yeah. From there, it started to evolve towards, some of Unico's own sort of grandiose, plans, or 80-20 plans, like bringing together these two seemingly hyper exclusive ends of our industry in natural wine and everything that is not natural wine, and bringing it together in one unified industry. so we could all actually just speak with one unified voice about good wine instead of philosophies behind it, and offer more value to customers.
Awesome. And Brendan, so thinking then, how do you see those events probably evolving in the next few months? You see them, you're thinking about continuing them or changing something on their structure?
Well, look, we always intended to do something in video. Like I'm sitting in a set right now. We'd already had most of the investment into doing video. And in fact, we were probably 6 months delayed into rolling something out by the time that lockdown hit. So it was a very quick, easy, natural progression for us to jump from one to another, and start to really scale it. And from here, obviously we have other brands in the spirits realm outside of the wine realm. You know, once we finish our hour of happy hour or wine for the people show, lift your spirits comes into play, which is spearheaded by our brand ambassador for Applewood Distillery in Melbourne. And so, you know, we're hoping to start to involve lots of different areas of the industry to showcase its importance, but to showcase how vibrant it is. We've done 95 episodes with over 70 different guests, and we've never left South Australia. And we could continue to go for another 100 episodes and never actually leave South Australia, which speaks volumes of the industry here and how diverse and how widespread, how important it is.
Yeah. Brandon, thank you very much. Next question that I have is for Chester. Again, talking about taking one for the team, I read your interview now a couple of weeks ago on, of course, as you were mentioning before, reopening the Cube and the decision to take the Cube open for 7 days, even if probably it wasn't the most financially reasonable solution for you. So I would like probably just to understand a little bit more what made you decide to take that choice, and how is the Cube? What is the future for the Cube?
Yeah, well, this is what it looks like for those who haven't seen it before, although it doesn't really look like that either most of the time. That's actually at night time. There's projection on the outside, so it's sort of hard. It sort of more looks like this object here, which you can tell is a toy, but that's why it was called the Darrenberg Cube, because our label name is such a puzzle to work out, and wine is such a puzzle to work out. I went, what's the most iconic puzzle, the Rubik's Cube, and then instead of colours, I changed them to puzzles, so they're actually harder, so it became the Darrenberg Cube. But yeah, look, it's become quite an iconic building quite quickly in Australia, and we've been featured a lot everywhere throughout the world. There's people everywhere I go. In fact, I've been doing a lot of webinars or virtual tastings through America, many different states, and then China, and it's been probably about 3 to 5 a week I'm doing. And a lot of people ask me about the Darrenberg Cube, so it's sort of quite well known, and people who haven't ever been to Australia are asking the same question. So it has got quite a following. So it made sense that if anyone was going to open up 7 days a week, it really had to be the Darrenberg Cube straight away first, and then we'll get people coming down here, and we got a lot of press. It was very good that we got some good press, maybe because some of the changes in the building were being talked about in the media, and so people, and it coincided with the holiday period as well in South Australia. So a lot of people were probably wondering what to do, and of course for those people who are listening from outside of Australia, there's South Australia's freed up a lot with the amount of people we can have in venues. So it's been very helpful that, and now a lot of other people have started opening up a lot more, and all the restaurants are open now, and it feels like we're back to a sort of semi-normal environment down here.
But you were also the Cube is also changing in the way in which the kind of level of cuisine that you're going to provide there. Is
That's
also
right.
going to
Yeah, so the Darrenberg Cube restaurant, we closed just before the lockdown happened in South Australia, and unfortunately I was given legal advice back then, before the stand down laws changed, that because we were standing them down for a significant amount of time, they said you can't do that, you have to make them redundant. So we made them all redundant, and then 4 days later the laws changed for the stand down. That was really unfortunate, really, and but it was a very high-end, degustation style of cuisine that we were, sort of 3/4 full on in winter time for the previous years, and near full for the rest of the time. So we went, well, it's winter was already bad with the COVID problem, then it's going to be worse.
Yep.
So we just went, well, look, we can't open a serious restaurant again right now. So we've opened a more casual affair, quite interesting cuisine soups, and we've got a sandwich called the Reuben's Cube, based on the New York Reuben sandwich, with pastrami and sauerkraut and cheese and a pickle and whatever. And so there's quite some pretty interesting things on the menu there. It's quite a diverse things, and you don't have to book. So, and actually now it's changed the energy of the building a little bit. Anyone who's been in the Darren Cube, you were never really allowed onto the second to top floor, because unless you were dining in that high-end experience. Well, now people can wander down from the upstairs, down the stairs, and through into the lift, or down through the other stairs. Yep. And it actually has changed the energy of the building quite a bit. And we've actually been doing quite a bit of business there. I think they're doing it was about like $10,000 a week in that new sort of casual affair. So it's been busy straight away. But we did get some healthy press, and we make some fun of it. And there's still all of the interesting art in there, so it's quite entertaining.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Esther. I think, it's been interesting one comment that you were saying about the non-booking, because it gives me a nice lead to the question I want to ask to Katie now. Because again, reading about another article, Katie, that you wrote probably now a couple of weeks ago, on the opposite, in a sense, of all the wineries that are sort of the hidden gems, the secrets in South Australia that you need to call to book, which we know if we were in Italy, in Spain, in France, that would be the norm, but it's not what we've been used doing here in Australia. And so I think the question that I have is sort of, how are you seeing this new approach to possibly wine tasting and cellar door visitation moving forward, where maybe you have places like Darrenbeck that do not require you to book, but many others are now requiring you to book, and possibly they're providing different kind of experiences for customers.
Yeah, ironically, that was a story I started quite a long time ago, well before COVID hit.
Right.
And they are the type of wineries that are so small that it's not economically viable to have a cellar door. So the only type of tasting you could do with them was to call them or send them an email, and they'd set up a tasting in the vineyard or the back of their ute or whatever. And I love that kind of tasting. That's great. So then, double ironically, when the COVID restrictions eased, we ran that story. But now even the bigger brands with, quite big established cellar doors, more so out of necessity really, have had to set up a booking system, because they can only have a certain amount of people for whatever type of space they have. And it was, I guess, about managing that flow of people coming through the door. And for a while there, obviously, tastings had to be seated. So it was all about fitting into the new way of things. From what I can gather from most of the cellar door managers and winery owners, particularly throughout South Australia, it's a little bit different in other states where, they can't have visitors at the moment, is a lot of them are really embracing that new seated, more formal sit-down tasting scenario, where I guess it's more of an experience in itself, which I guess at the Cube, it's always been an experience. But for some others, it was very much belly to bar. Some poor person behind the counter at the cellar door trying to remember who tasted what. And, you'd get bus loads of people in tasting and just wanting to get drunk, really.
Yep.
It seems that a lot of brands are embracing and finding this not as an excuse, but an opportunity to rethink how they do things, and maybe offer some different food, do a big flight where they can actually engage with fewer people, but on a deeper level. And I think in some ways it's really exciting. And I think maybe just, again, communicating that to the general public who in South Australia particularly, they are used to turning up and getting their glass full without, for many, paying any money. I think paid tastings will now be the norm.
Yep.
across the board. And I think that's wonderful. It should have been that way a long time ago.
Awesome. Katie, thank you very much. I'm going to then finish, I guess, the first round of question, asking Linda, as our resident US person, to just probably, you know, very general question, but what's going on in California? What's going on in the US? How's things up there?
You mean outside of our crazy president? Well, I can speak.
Yeah, we have another webinar for that. No.
Well, what's happening here is, you know, we went into lockdown for 3 months. No visitation was allowed from mid-March until about mid-June. And then when visitation was allowed again, it came back on very strongly. And we had to be extremely careful because we feel that first and foremost, our priority is to protect the employees of the wineries and the guests. So creating and instituting mandatory health and safety protocols was extremely important. And those included things that are some of the things you've been talking about. Mandatory by appointment only, seated tastings only, masks are actually required unless you're actually tasting the wine, limiting the size of the groups, that they must be from the same household to sit together, etc. So all these things really importantly, because we went from no visitation to everyone couldn't wait to get out, and Napa Valley being so close to the San Francisco Bay Area, literally we were inundated those first few weekends with people who were so excited to escape and get up to wine country. But I think now things have settled down a bit. We're a little bit more comfortable with how we're operating everything. All tastings, by the way, here are outside only at this time, and thank goodness it's our summer season. But we are starting to get nervous, and we'll look forward to getting any assistance and ideas from you on when we have to shift for the winter time, how to conduct more tastings within the wineries, within the cellars, and again, keep the employees and the guests safe.
Thank you. Thank you, Linda. And look, we've done now the first round of questions, and I have a few others that I would like to ask our panelists, but just as a reminder, you can use the Q&A chat box at the bottom of your Zoom window. So if you want to start asking questions, I will then help facilitating the Q&A at the end of the questions that I prepared for our panelists today. But with that, I would like to go back to Brendan and going back to the point of the virtual wine tasting that he has been organizing in the last few months. And I would like to go a little bit more practical and sort of asking you, Brendan, can you tell us a little bit about, again, maybe 2 or 3 do's and don'ts that you've learned, or that, you know, learning by maybe mistake, you've said, well, this should be things that you should really think about when organizing virtual wine tasting, and these are other things that are big no-nos.
Sure. Yeah. Look. First and foremost, just like we think of it like a media business. There are customers, audience. You need to cater for your customers or audience. You need to respect them first and foremost. If they desire to push, you know, in one particular area, you need to make the determination that your broadcast or live stream is either for them or not for them. And you really need to think that the medium that you're dealing with it's live, it's video, it's raw. There is a certain amount of editing if you wanted to do stuff that wasn't live and just later broadcast or upload to things like YouTube and other video-based platforms like Vimeo. But you know, when it comes to wine in particular, just you need to really think very carefully about, and this is what we largely saw, this is what you don't do. You don't just do what you do in your cellar door at home via a video. That is not really captivating or interesting. And it is actually quite tough. It took us a number of days of an entire team brainstorming. It's not just literally, it's definitely not a one-man band, what we do for Wine for the People. In fact, it takes about 4 to 5 full-time jobs just to facilitate what we do. There's a producer, there's essentially a person running all the bookings, there's someone paying attention to all of the comments, there's someone running against trolls that might jump on Twitch and start, you know, putting nefarious, you know, comments up to be able to police that. So it's quite an involved process. Quality. Make sure that your stream is quality. You know, literally for you know, we've probably got the most jacked up Zoom setups, close to around about 50,000 Aussie. You know, to be able to outlay, to be able to do something of high quality, and you don't make a decision like that lightly. You don't make a decision to drop that amount of cash unless you know exactly what you're going to do with it. So planning. Is so respect the audience, make sure it's absolutely captivating, make sure that you're focused on quality, and make sure that you're planning everything. Literally, there is no excuse for poor planning in this field.
Okay. Thanks, Brendan. Kelly, I have another question for you, which is, you know, as a storyteller, you know, and probably with everything, but, you know, particularly I think with storytelling, being dynamic and adapt to situation is a critical aspect of what you do. So what has changed in the stories that you've been telling, that you've been writing about in the last few months?
So,
if any.
No, there certainly has been. I guess the medium hasn't necessarily changed. I've always kind of straddled print, digital, radio, social media. You have to these days. You can't just really focus on one, and they all cross over. But I guess front of mind for me from the very beginning of this is because it's bloody confusing. It's confusing enough for the owner of a wine brand to stay up to date with what the regulations are, how many people they can let in, can they let people in, what can they serve, and by what means can they do it. For the general public who are being bombarded with information from all directions, they are next level confused. So I guess the stories I've been telling have focused on who can I help? How can I help them in terms of brands? Where is my time best spent in that respect? And two, for the general public, am I giving them all the information I can? Is it as up to date as possible? And certainly, I mean, even interstate now, that's changing by the day. But how can I best equip them with the information they need to then turn up at a cellar door or a restaurant or a cafe and behave appropriately, so that everybody wins? And I think, I guess that's an ongoing challenge, and something that's our responsibility, as well as, I guess, government, to keep us all up to date.
Perfect. Thank you, Katie. And I have another question now to both Linda and Chester, in a sense, which is, of course, we've seen a change. You know, the impossibility to travel has surely changed. Probably, well, actually, is my question, but probably has changed the clientele that is visiting wineries, and, you know, Linda, from your point, an entire region. So how as a regional association for Linda and Chester as a winery owner, how have you seen that clientele changing, and have you seen anything different in the way in which that clientele is relating with the things that you do?
I can answer it quickly, because in all honesty here, it's not that big of a difference, at least for Napa. Remember, California alone has 40 million people, and we have 8 million people in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is just 30 minutes away, and the furthest away is 2 hours. So because of that, our top market and our number one source of visitors anyway is California. I think international visitors is about 10%. So obviously we have lost that. However, I have to say, in sales, with the domestic traveler, we're far more likely to get a higher sale than with an international visitor, just because of the restrictions and what they can take back home or ship home.
Perfect. Thank you, Linda. Chester?
Yeah, well, obviously they're only South Australians, and yeah, for a while there we did have to have them all seated. Actually, we moved back to utilising the bars. We've got an enormous amount of bar space in the Darrenberg Cube, so we can still social distance groups of people, small groups, big groups, and get away with that. When we have them sitting down, we found that they like to stay there for quite a bit longer, and they also tended to buy less at the end of it. When they're at the bar, I think the service is different. We can talk to them more effectively and sell better, and so yeah, sales are better. but they're not, the South Australians don't buy as much as the Victorians and the New South Wales people that come, the interstate people. I think they tend to buy more dozens. And so everyone buys, but they're only buying a few bottles here, whereas it was higher. Of course, the internationals, they don't necessarily buy much, but we actually can deliver to their house in China or in America or England, and so we do get quite good sales often on that point of view. So, but it's changed just because they're South Australians, really.
Oh, really? Okay. Okay, perfect. Look, and I can see already a few questions popping up here and there. So I really have just one last question for Chester, Linda, and Brendan, which is about one point that I think both of you, well, Linda and Chester, really discussed more early on in our webinar, which is around the issue of staff. We know, unfortunately, this has been probably one of the hardest things to manage because, of course, particularly we're not just dealing with a product, of course, but we're dealing with people. So it would be interesting to understand more, how have you been managing your staff? What solutions have you taken in place to face the situation? And I guess what is the scenario that you're thinking moving forward about staff employment?
Well, I'm the only one unmuted, so I might as well start. We had a very tiny vintage this year, which was obviously very expensive. We had a very poor set during November. Last year was bad weather, hot weather and cold weather, and so the quantity of grapes we received was very low, and obviously therefore the price per litre is very high, and so we were looking at somehow having to reduce our labour just because the work wasn't going to be there. Yep. Now, with the JobKeeper being brought in, it was a big benefit. We retained all of our employees, and we just have them working a little bit less hours each week. A lot, of course, we were getting JobKeeper for the few months we were closed in the Darrenby Cube and the Darren's Veranda restaurant and other places. We actually got them all pruning, trained them all to get out there in the vineyard, and as many as we could get out there. There's a few that were a bit resistant, and of course it was a little bit tricky because we have a lot of people who only worked on the weekends in the Darrenby Cube because they were students studying or have other jobs or whatever, and so they were working only weekends. And then they got JobKeeper, they qualified for JobKeeper, and then they still really couldn't work much more than weekends. So that they didn't really help us prune much because it was difficult to work on the weekends. So they actually really come out very well out of this, obviously. But now that we're open, of course, as of some months ago, 6 weeks ago on the weekends, then they are all working and doing their JobKeeper. But it's been a huge advantage. Up until the JobKeeper was announced, there really wasn't really any money being sent to companies our size, other than that there was $100,000 on your BAS statement. It's spread out over a period of payments, but other than that there wasn't much benefit. So it's been helpful to replace some of the turnover. We are a very international company also. We sell to 90 countries, and we sell more overseas than we do in Australia. And so that it's been affected everywhere, of course, our sales, and a lot of it we've been established overseas for a long time. So there's a lot of companies we work with that are very well concentrated on the on-premise, as in restaurants and whatever, and those are the ones that have been hit the most. So we have had quite considerable sales drop in our exports, and China and whatever is coming back online and starting to drink some higher end wines nicely now, but it's still not quite where it was. So there's been quite a lot of changes still, and we're still not turning over what we were.
No. Okay. Thank you, Chester. Linda?
So similar to what Chester was talking about there, here in Napa, wineries deployed employees to other areas of the operation that were allowed to be open, and that mainly was production during the shutdown or the lockdown for those 3 months that we couldn't have visitors. So tasting room or cellar door employees were redeployed in other areas. Something that's happening now is we're getting ready. We're about to start harvest here in a couple of weeks. And so our huge concern is all of the wonderful international interns who we normally have come help us are not allowed to be here. So wineries are scrambling to hire folks and again, shift other employees over to work in the vineyards and on the crush pad. I have heard of a number of people who work in the restaurant industry. Not all of our restaurants are open. They are only allowed to serve outdoors. So quite a few restaurant staff were laid off and they are going to work during harvest. For our team, we still are not allowed to work at our office. Offices are not essential business, so we are still all working remotely. That's clearly been a challenge, not just in everything that we're doing and everything that we're offering for our members and in our marketing endeavors. Everything we had to completely change. And then how we are working had to change in having everyone work at home, including people who had never worked at home before. I think going forward, I would definitely, even when we're allowed to be back in our offices, I will let people have the flexibility to still work from home and integrate that more in just the way that we operate. So I think that's one of the silver linings for us is to have that flexibility. It's just, one example. So I think overall the common theme here is coming up with other things for people to do and other ways to work and continuing that in the future.
In that way. Linda, thank you. Brendan, what about you? With your staff, you got more people actually with everything that is going on? Stay stable?
We unfortunately, we didn't qualify for JobKeeper at all.
Okay.
Something to do with doubling your size in 12 months. And we did the calculations based on, I believe we had to be 30% lower than the previous year's figures. And for us to do that, we'd actually run out of cash. We would actually have to go through a process of administration just to qualify for JobKeeper, which we thought was just nonsensical. And it's not the position that many other wineries would be in. And keep in mind, we're not just a winery, we're a winery, a cooperative, we're a drinks business, we're a distillery with multiple brands as well. So so we are in a bit of a unique position. But yeah, we had to earn our way out the old fashioned way. In fact, and it worked pretty well. Like we're literally this week hiring 3 full-time roles. Which I think is a bit of a rarity in our industry at the moment. But we just had to knuckle down. We pulled the team aside. Of course, we have an on-premise venue here, which we just couldn't operate. So we did lose 1 full-time member, bar manager that we just couldn't do anything with, and about 3 or 4 casuals who have all since now just come back, which have been fantastic. We rallied the team and made a plan and executed the plan with remarkable speed and efficiency, and
perfect.
One
Thank
thing
you.
led to another.
Thank you, Brendan. Look, I've finished the series of questions that I kind of prepared a little bit, and I'd like to open the floor to the questions that are coming from the audience. So thank you, the panelists, Brendan, Linda, for already answered a few questions. So thank you for helping me in my job. But among the questions that are still live and unanswered, I have one for Chester from Fraser. Says, Chester, how important is product innovation in enotourism, or is there a set of prescribed experiences guests are predisposed to want?
Yeah, well, since the Darrenbach Cube has so many visitors, we could really have a lot of experiences on offer, and which people book for usually. Sometimes they can roll up and do them, but we prefer booking so that people can blend their own version of the dead arm. So we have components of the dead arm, and they blend. This is one of our top Shiraz. They blend their own version and hear about why these single vineyards are the way they are, and then they get a bottle to take home. Or they can do a more simple tasting where they just get a heap of varietals and we tell them about what these varieties are, where they come from and whatever. Or you can do a tasting of our amazing sites or vertical of dead arm. I mean, there's so many different experiences. You can have a tour. You can do, we have a hope of port barrels as well, we're not allowed to call it fortified wine barrels from the 1970s to current, where you can go and taste your birth year, or maybe a few birth years, or a few years I should say. Like if you are 50 years old, you might want to try your 20-year birthday and your 30th year birthday, and remember what you were doing then, and just for interest sake. So, but there's a lot of experiences like that. Of course, we've got the Dali exhibition going on. Yeah. So that's been really very helpful to bring people in with 25 sculptures from Dali, and they can buy them up to $3 million, so a bit over $3 million, some of them are. But there's still the restaurants, of course, there's experiences. And as far as innovation goes, winery-wise, well, we've got 37 grape varieties I work with and make 76 different wines, which apparently is more than any other winery in the world. As a single brand wine. So I suppose we've been very innovative here, and all of the sculptures. When you come to the Darrenberg Cube, you can download an app, and you can click on every art piece that's in there. There's up to about 100 now, and you can hear how it relates to wine, and you get this whole feeling of Darrenberg and each individual wine, and how we 4 generations old, and how we make our wines in a fairly natural way. We've got the world's first fully automated natural winemaker. We've got a cow sitting hugging a polygraph, which represents our viticulture. Yeah, well, we're biodynamic. We're the largest biodynamic grower in Australia, and so in biodynamics, you fill cow horns up with poo and you bury it. And it was started in 1920s by Rudolf Steiner, and he didn't really use any science. He just sort of came up with it, and so hence the cow is hugging the polygraph for lie detector, because we don't know whether it was based on evil lies. But it's all sort of quirky and fun, and I call it the Alternate Realities Museum, so that because you have different realities with each piece of art, partly relating to wine, partly relating to yourself and Darrenberg. So there's a lot to see and do. So yeah, innovation I think is the key to Darrenberg and the Cube. And yeah.
Thank you, Chester. I have now a question from Louise to all of you. I might start with Katie, then maybe Linda, Brendan, and back to Chester. And the question is from Louise, who says, now that the restrictions are easing somewhat, what tips or suggestions do you have to pivot now to the new normal? Is collaboration with other wineries or tour companies the key? Is it too late to jump on the home Zoom tasting bandwagon?
Unmute. Look, I don't think it's too late to jump on the bandwagon. My advice with that would be is if you're going to do it, make sure you do it really well. I think there have been a lot of virtual Zoom tasting. I like to talk about the great ones, but there have been a lot that didn't quite miss the mark. I know Brendan's just done a comment there about wine not making it to people's homes before the tastings happen. So pre-plan, work really far ahead to make sure you get your bookings through in plenty of time for hopefully that to happen, or like Brendan just said, you can film a virtual tasting so that people, at least if their wine hasn't arrived in time, they can watch it back and do it in their own time. So if you're going to do it, make sure it's great quality, because you can damage your brand as much as much as any good that you'll ever bring if you don't do it right.
Thank you, Katie. Linda?
Yes, well, answering Louise's question, I would say, number one, collaboration should always be a part of your operation in good times and in bad times. You should be working with neighboring wineries, tour companies, hotels, restaurants, etc. Partnerships are key for success in marketing and business these days. So that's around forever. And if you were forced to get into this space now, good, and dive in even more. That's good no matter what. Virtual tastings are definitely here to stay. And as Katie said, we just need to make sure and help each other to improve how they are being conducted. I've also seen lots of, I've seen a lot of good ones, but even more bad ones. But partnerships in the tastings are a really nice thing to do, partnering with a restaurant or other wineries or what have you. But the virtual tastings you need to think about for the producers out there is not just to connect with the consumer, but it's a great way to connect with trade. when you're not able to travel to see your importer in other countries, or wine clubs, private clubs in other countries that you may be exporting to, what a great way to connect with those people during normal times and abnormal times. So definitely, no matter what, learn how to do it well, because they should be integrated into your future business plan.
Thank you, Linda. Brendan, any more thoughts on the new normal and what should be the level of collaboration potentially, or Zoom bandwagon?
Look, probably boil things back to basics. I know we've got a lot of sort of winery owners and marketers that are chiming in. I am constantly surprised when I talk to or even consult with other wineries that they don't know what their CPAs, their cost per acquisition is. And if you know what your cost per acquisition is, then why don't you think beyond Zoom tastings and the dedication of time and the implication that you need to be at a place every single time. Trust me, I've done 95 in a row at 5 p.m. precisely every day, and that does tie me to here. But let's just say you invest $10,000 in getting a videographer to come and actually film you once a year, doing the tasting of each and every single one of your offerings, and then uploading that to YouTube and sharing that across your social channels, continually resharing that out. When you send a package out to a customer, you're sending them a YouTube link so that they can actually see you taste it with them. And they can actually still feel the same connectedness between, basically a human face responding on video. It's really hard to fake this. And you can actually boil it down to a cost per acquisition for a soft lead or a hard lead. And that would well and truly justify it's the old proverbial, you've got a bus that rocks out the front of your house, and you can talk to all 30 of them, but you have to give them some money to do so. Like, what is that figure? Is it $5? Is it $2? Is it $1? You can justify that and then go and get a whole bunch of quotes from various videographers to be able to allow you to do it high quality, repeatable, and shareable. So that's probably where I would personally go. Outside of the live thing, maybe make the live thing a bit of a bit of a Salt Bay spice on top of a permanent shareable content. That's really done high quality, because that way you can get away with maybe some raw type stuff with Zoom, which is inherently going to be pretty raw unless you've got a dope setup. Or you release it, you rent it out for a day, get a videographer in.
Thank you, Brendan. Chester, I'm gonna maybe ask you a comment, and I'm gonna also plug in another question that I have from Fred to you, which is, do your unusual names of your wines increase sales? Before leading the microphone back to Noel for the concluding remarks.
Well, I think they do. They're usually humorous, the label names we have, and humor is a great seller, of course. And there was a study done actually on the value of wine, and the more difficult the name was to say and more intellectual it was, the more highly valued the wine is, apparently. So that's quite interesting. But nowadays just about every name's taken, so you've got to come out with something completely weird to fit in. But it's all part of the personality of Darrenby. And to follow on from that, Brendan knows how I try to make the webinars I've been doing, which there's a lot of throughout the world. I try to make them very entertaining, and it's just an extension on from the dinners that I've done in the past. So there's always props that I have for each of the label names. So this is the football Shiraz, it's a toilet roll holder. Doesn't mean the football gives you the shits unless maybe you drank too much of it. There's the dead arm Shiraz, which is this arm is very dead, and I've got the money spider Roussan. So years ago this used to work. When you put a magnetic spider on the back, it would crawl along the ground and go, help me, which was great because this represents the white Rhone attacking the red Rhone that's been here for 200 years. This one's only been here 20 years. And I also have these caricatures of our label names. So you can see here the Cenosillicophobic cat, one of my favourite names, the fear of an empty glass, which many people in our industry suffer from. And I tell a story. I had a cat called Booze, whose real name was non-alcoholic Booze. We called him Booze for short. He thought he could drink, being called Booze, but wasn't allowed to drink because he's non-alcoholic Booze. So he suffered from Cenosillicophobia all his life. And there's, I've got a cartoon for every label. There's the cartoon for the dead arm, and and it goes on and on. And sometimes I dress up, which adds a little bit of character. We have a rosé called Stephanie the Gnome with rose-coloured glasses. So I've got this little gnome outfit. It's a rather long name. Stephanie the Gnome actually was a Pinot originally from Adelaide Hills that we made in 2011 when it rained a lot. And it came out very light coloured but with structure. So it tasted more like a wine from Burgundy called Savigny Le Bon. But instead of Savigny Le Bon, I called it Stephanie the Gnome just because it rhymed. And with rose-coloured glasses because we added Cinsault and Mourvedre Rosé to it. And when you drink a bottle of this wine, life is like looking through rose-coloured glasses. But of course, a gnome is a little bearded man, and Stephanie's a girl's name. So this is a transsexual wine to actually pay homage to the fact that back 20 years ago, real men in Australia were not caught dead drinking rosé, so you had to be transsexual. Now we're all very comfortable with our sexuality, and it's all fine to own up to your interesting complexities. So anyway, but you know, that's sort of what I tend to do and bring out into the dinners that I've been doing in the webinar. So just to make it fun for everyone.
Well, look, on those notes, and I guess as somebody who loves colorful trousers, I had a few troubles on Friday nights in Hindley Street wearing pink pants or purple pants. And on this note, I would say I would really like to thank all of you. I think as some of the comments already are here are really positive, and what I've been, I think, particularly pleased to hear all of you is really a positive vibe. I think I think we were a bit on that kind of doom and gloom feeling a few months ago about particularly the future of wine tourism. Coming out of this webinar with much more optimism. So I want to thank really all of you, Katie, Linda, Brendan, and Chester for the optimism and the suggestion that you shared with all of us. And I'm passing the microphone back to Professor Lindsay for the concluding remarks.
Thank you very much, Armando. Yes, look, I'd like to reinforce the thanks. What an exceptional panel. Linda, Brendan, Katie, Chester, and you too, Armando. A big thank you for your time today and taking the time this evening as well. So for you, Linda, I know you're in Los Angeles and it's coming up for dinner time for you. Look, it was a great session. There were so many things to take in. But a couple of takeaway messages for me were, the importance of delivering value to customers, bringing together the industry and making it unified, and reinventing our business models, to suit the current climate. Innovation is so important here. And I was really interested, Chester, in one of the things that you said about upskilling, and diversifying the roles of your staff. There were a number of other messages on that as well, but these were just a few that resonated with me. But look, on behalf of AmCham, I'd like to thank the Adelaide Business School for its contribution and support, both AmCham and the Business School. We couldn't have done it without both these organisations. Thank you to our audience. Thank you very much for everyone who joined us today. And just as a little plug for next time around, you can catch part 3 of the Business of Wine series on Tuesday, 4th of August, where our speakers will be discussing the topic of wine tech and innovation. That's it from us. Have a great day. Have a great evening, everyone, and bye.